never thought my own family would shut me out of Christmas. A week before the holiday, I called my parents to ask what time I should come by. My father's voice was sharp, almost businesslike, when he answered. He said, "Ethan, this year it's better if you don't come." At first, I thought he was joking. I laughed nervously and asked, "What do you mean?" "It's Christmas." His reply cut deeper than anything I had ever heard from him. "Your sister is bringing her fiancé to meet us. She doesn't want you there. She said your minimum wage job would humiliate her in front of him." I froze, the phone pressed against my ear, unable to believe what I was hearing. My father's words replayed in my head like a hammer driving nails into my chest. My own sister, the girl I grew up protecting, had decided that my work, my life, was beneath her. And my father agreed. I wanted to argue. I wanted to ask him how he could say that, how he could put appearances above his own son. But instead, I felt the air leave my lungs, and all I managed to whisper was, "I understand." He didn't comfort me. He didn't take it back. He simply hung up. I sat in silence for a long time, the glow of the Christmas lights in my apartment blurring through my tears. For years, I had been made to feel like the disappointment of the family, the one who hadn't gone to college, the one who worked with his hands instead of wearing a suit. But this was different. This wasn't just disappointment. This was rejection. I told myself to let it go, to move on, to spend the holiday alone. But 3 days later, something happened that none of them saw coming. The man my sister was so desperate to impress, the man she believed would look down on me, turned out to be standing in my shop, wearing my uniform, working under my orders. And that was when everything began to unravel. Growing up, I always felt like I lived in my sister's shadow. Samantha, or Sam, as everyone called her, was the golden child of the family. She was the one who earned top grades, went to college, and landed a job at a sleek marketing firm in the city. Every Thanksgiving, Christmas, and birthday, my parents would shower her with praise. "Look at Sam," my dad would say, raising his glass. "She's going places." My mother would nod proudly, her eyes shining as if Sam had already conquered the world. I was rarely mentioned in those speeches. I was the older brother, the one who had skipped college because I wanted to work with my hands. After high school, I spent years saving money to open a car repair shop in town. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I poured every ounce of energy into building it from the ground up. The regulars knew me, trusted me, and relied on me. When someone's truck broke down, or a mom needed her car fixed before the school week, I was there. To me, that meant something. To my family, it meant very little. Dad always reminded me that fixing cars was a dead-end life. He worked as a financial consultant, and he believed success was measured by the number of zeros in a paycheck. He saw my shop as a hobby, not a career. I still remember one evening at dinner when he said, "Ethan, when are you going to get serious about your future? You can't spend your whole life covered in grease." I tried to keep calm as I cut into my steak. "Dad, I employ people. I run the books myself. I make enough to live on, and I help people. Isn't that serious enough?" He waved his hand dismissively. "It's not about enough, son." "It's about ambition," Mom, sitting beside him, placed her hand on his arm gently. "Richard," she said softly, "let him be." She always tried to smooth things over, but she never truly defended me. Her silence hurt more than his words. Sam didn't make things easier. She often joked at my expense, laughing about how my office smelled like oil or how my clothes always had stains on them. I tried to brush it off, but there were times her words stung worse than a hammer strike to the thumb. Despite all that, I never stopped showing up for family events. I told myself that Christmas, Thanksgiving, and birthdays weren't about being judged. They were about being together. No matter how small I felt in that house, I still wanted to belong. As Christmas approached that year, I decorated my apartment with a small tree. The lights were a little uneven, and the ornaments were hand-me-downs from when I was a kid, but I liked it. I imagined coming home after dinner with my family, sitting on the couch with hot cocoa and replaying the evening in my head. I always held on to that quiet hope that maybe this time things would feel different. The truth was, I wanted my father's approval more than I wanted anything else. I wanted to hear him say, "I'm proud of you, Ethan." I wanted my mother to smile at me with the same warmth she gave Sam, and I wanted Sam, despite everything, to look at me like a brother she respected, not a mistake she had to explain away. My life outside of them wasn't empty. At the shop, I was someone. My employees, guys like Tony and Mark, respected me. They saw me as a leader, not a disappointment. Customers would shake my hand and thank me for being honest, for not overcharging, for treating them like family. That validation mattered, but when I stepped into my parents' home, it all vanished. To them, I was just the boy who never became the man they imagined. On the night I called to ask about Christmas dinner, I had just finished a long shift. My hands were raw from the cold, and my body ached from hours under the hood of an old pickup. Still, I was smiling as I dialed my parents' number. I thought of Mom's cooking, Dad's booming laugh when he told old stories, and even Sam rolling her eyes at my jokes. I told myself that no matter how they saw me, I'd still be part of the celebration. When Dad's voice came through the phone, firm and distant, I immediately knew something was wrong. The way he spoke, clipped and final, told me this wasn't going to be the warm invitation I expected. By the time he told me I wasn't welcome, the image I had built of Christmas shattered. That rejection wasn't just about one holiday. It was years of criticism finally taking shape. It was proof that no matter what I built, no matter how hard I worked, I would never measure up in their eyes. As I hung up the phone, I looked around my apartment. The little tree twinkled back at me, but it felt mocking now. I sat on the couch, staring at the lights, and I thought about every sacrifice I had made to run my shop. Every long night and every dollar saved. I thought about the customers who called me trustworthy and the employees who looked up to me. Then I thought about my own family deciding that all of it, and all of me, wasn't good enough to sit at their table. That night, something inside me hardened. For the first time, I stopped wishing they would see me differently. I stopped hoping for their approval. Instead, I began to wonder what it would look like if I stopped hiding my strength from them. I didn't know it then, but the chance to show them was only days away. The call from my father replayed in my head for days. Every word sat heavy in my chest. He didn't just tell me not to come for Christmas. He told me I wasn't welcome because of who I was, because of the work I did, because my sister was embarrassed to have me in the same room as her fiancé. I tried to shake it off. At the shop, I kept busy, working on engines, handling customers, and checking on my employees. Outwardly, I looked calm, but inside I was torn apart. Every time I tightened a bolt or wiped grease off my hands, I could hear my father saying, "She doesn't want you there. Your job would humiliate her." When I was younger, I thought my dad was tough on me because he wanted the best for me. Now I realized he didn't just want me to succeed. He wanted me to succeed on his terms. He wanted me to live a life that looked good on paper, not one that made me feel fulfilled. My sister had given him exactly that, and he rewarded her with unconditional support. I gave him something different, and for that, he decided I was expendable. I thought about calling my mom to see if she felt differently, but I stopped myself. I knew she would tell me she loved me, that she wanted me there, but then she would remind me to respect Dad's wishes. Her love never turned into action. She never fought for me, and as much as that hurt, I couldn't bear to hear it again. The night after the call, I sat at my kitchen table staring at a plate of food I barely touched. I felt like I was 12 years old again, standing in the backyard while Dad bragged about Sam's grades to the neighbors, never once mentioning anything I had done. I remembered how I forced myself to smile that day, even though my chest burned with shame. That same burn came back now, stronger than ever. A part of me wanted to show up at their house anyway, to walk through the door and prove I wasn't afraid of them. But what would that do? They didn't want me there. I imagined Sam's face if I showed up. She would make some snide comment about my clothes or the smell of oil that followed me from the shop. Dad would frown, Mom would shuffle awkwardly, and I would sit at the table knowing I'd forced myself into a place where I wasn't wanted. So I stayed quiet. I told myself I would let them have their perfect holiday. I told myself I didn't need to be part of it. But the truth is, my heart ached in a way I couldn't ignore. Christmas wasn't just another holiday. It was the one time of year I still felt like a little boy waiting for his family to come together. Now I was being told that family had no room for me. 2 days later, while I was at the shop, one of my employees, Tony, came to me with some paperwork. He was training a new assistant manager and wanted me to sign off on the hire. I glanced at the name on the form and felt my stomach twist. Lucas Hale. At first, I thought it had to be a coincidence. Lucas was a common enough name, but when I walked into the office and saw him sitting there, dressed in work boots and a shop shirt, I knew. It was him, Sam's fiancé, the man I was supposedly unworthy to sit beside at a Christmas dinner. He looked up at me, and for a split second his face froze. He recognized me, too. He quickly tried to cover it up with a smile, but I saw the flicker of panic in his eyes. "Mr. Cole," he said, standing up and reaching out his hand. "Thank you for the opportunity." I shook his hand firmly. "Welcome aboard, Lucas." My voice was steady, but inside I was reeling. The same man who was about to sit at my parents' table as a symbol of success was now standing in my office, about to work under my leadership. For the rest of the day I kept a close eye on him. He was polite, maybe even nervous, and he worked hard enough. But he avoided looking me in the eye too often. I wondered if Sam knew. I wondered if my parents knew. I doubted it. If they had, they would never have excluded me. They would have been too afraid of the truth. That night, I lay awake in bed staring at the ceiling. I thought about my father's words again, but now they had a different weight. He said my job would humiliate my sister in front of her fiancé. Yet here was her fiancé, clocking in at my shop, wearing my uniform, taking orders from me. The humiliation he feared was already built into the reality they had ignored. They were so obsessed with appearances that they had blinded themselves to the truth. I had a choice. I could stay quiet, let Lucas play his role at Christmas dinner, let my family go on believing I wasn't good enough. Or I could show up and let them see the truth for themselves. For years, I had swallowed my pride, bit my tongue, and let them treat me like I was lesser. But as I stared at the ceiling that night, I felt something shift. I was done hiding. I was done letting them define my worth. The conflict wasn't just between me and my family anymore, it was inside me. I had to decide whether to stay the son who quietly accepted rejection, or become the man who finally stood tall in front of them. Christmas was only a day away, and the decision I made would change everything. When I discovered Lucas working in my shop, the decision that lay before me gnawed at me constantly. I could have fired him immediately, confronted him, and demanded to know why he had chosen to work under me while planning to present himself as a polished success story to my family. But something held me back. Instead of anger, I felt a strange calm. For once, I had the upper hand, and it was not because I had schemed or lied, it was because of the truth. Lucas was nervous around me. Every time he caught me watching him, he lowered his head or busied himself with a task. He never mentioned Sam. He never spoke about his engagement. He acted like a man carrying a weight he didn't want anyone to see. And I let him. I wanted him to squirm. I wanted him to realize that the man my sister and my father had dismissed as a disappointment was now his boss. But as the hours passed and the holiday crept closer, I wrestled with the bigger decision. Should I expose him? Should I walk into my parents' home on Christmas Day and tell them everything? Part of me longed to. I imagined the shock on Sam's face, the silence that would fall across the room, the way my father would struggle to form words. The thought was satisfying, but I also feared it would make me no better than them. That night, after closing the shop, I sat with Tony and Mark, my two longest-standing employees. We were cleaning up the back room, putting away tools for the long holiday weekend, when Tony glanced at me. "You've been quiet," he said. "Something's on your mind." I hesitated, then told them the truth. I explained that Lucas, the new hire, was my sister's fiancé. I told them how my parents had banned me from Christmas because of my job, and how they believed Lucas was too important to risk seeing me. Mark leaned back in his chair and shook his head. "That's messed up, boss. Real messed up." Tony crossed his arms. "So, what are you going to do? You going to let them keep treating you like that?" I rubbed my hands together, staring at the grease under my nails. "I don't know. Part of me wants to let it go. Part of me thinks I should walk in there and show them who I really am." Tony leaned forward. "Ethan, you built this place from nothing. You give us steady work, you treat us like family, and you've never once turned your back on anyone here. If they can't see your worth, maybe it's time you stop hiding it." His words hit me hard. For years, I had carried shame that didn't belong to me. I had let my father's narrow view of success define the way I saw myself. I had let my sister's mocking words chip away at my confidence. But I realized now that outside of my parents' house, I wasn't a failure. I was a leader. I was a man who created something lasting, something that mattered. The decision became clearer. I would not confront Lucas at the shop. I would not embarrass him there, because that wasn't about him. It was about me and my family. I would show them the truth where it mattered most. In their home, on Christmas, in front of the table they had told me I didn't deserve to sit at. On Christmas Eve, I stayed late at the shop, making sure everything was spotless. The place smelled of oil and fresh rubber, but it also smelled like something else, like pride. I walked through the bays, running my hand along the hood of a car we had just finished repairing, and I thought about how this space represented years of sacrifice and persistence. My father could never take that away from me. My sister could never erase it with her insults. As I locked up, I felt a steadiness I hadn't felt in a long time. The fear of rejection was still there, but it no longer controlled me. For the first time, I wasn't going to play the role of the quiet son who nodded and said, "I understand." I was going to walk into that house with my head held high. On Christmas morning, I put on clean clothes, pressed and neat, but I didn't try to look like someone I wasn't. I wore what I always wore when I wanted to present myself with pride. My dark jeans, a button-down shirt, and my work jacket with my name stitched on the chest. I didn't hide my identity, I embraced it. Before I left, I looked in the mirror and spoke to myself. You don't need their approval. You just need the truth to come out. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, I saw cars lined up along the street. Sam's car was parked right in front, shiny and spotless as always. I sat in my truck for a moment, my hands gripping the steering wheel, my heart pounding. I thought about turning back, but then I remembered the years of silence, the years of being told I wasn't enough. No more. I stepped out, walked up to the door, and knocked. My mother answered, her face full of surprise. "Ethan? We didn't expect you." I smiled gently. "I know. But I think it's time I join the family for Christmas." She hesitated, torn between love and fear, then opened the door. As I stepped inside, I could already hear Sam's laughter from the dining room. My father's deep voice carried through the hall, and then I saw Lucas seated proudly at the table. He froze when his eyes met mine. That was the moment I knew. The decision was right. I had walked into the heart of the rejection, not to beg for acceptance, but to show them who I was and what they had overlooked for far too long. When I stepped into the dining room, every pair of eyes turned toward me. The clatter of forks and the hum of conversation stopped instantly. My father sat at the head of the table, his posture stiffening the moment he saw me. My mother looked torn between relief and worry, her hands wringing nervously in her lap. Sam leaned back in her chair, her smile disappearing as her eyes narrowed in irritation. And then there was Lucas. He sat tall at first, trying to keep his composure, but when our eyes locked, his confidence faltered. His hand, holding a wine glass, trembled slightly before he set it back down on the table. "Ethan," my father said sharply, his voice carrying authority, "what are you doing here?" I thought I made myself clear. I walked forward slowly, keeping my voice calm. "You did, Dad. You said I wasn't welcome because Sam didn't want me here. You said my job would humiliate her in front of her fiancé." The room went silent. My words hung in the air like smoke no one could clear. My father's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Sam spoke up. "You shouldn't have come," she said coldly. "This is an important night for us. Lucas is meeting the family, and we don't need you dragging your greasy world into it." I looked at her, then at Lucas. "Greasy world, huh? Funny, because your fiancé has been spending the last week working in it." Under me, the room froze. My father blinked, confused, while my mother gasped. Sam let out a short laugh, shaking her head in disbelief. "What are you talking about?" I turned directly to Lucas. "You want to explain, or should I?" Lucas opened his mouth, then closed it again. His face turned pale. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but clear. "It's true. I've been working at Ethan's shop. I lost my job a month ago and I didn't tell anyone. I needed work, and he hired me." The impact of his confession hit the table like a thunderclap. My father's face went red, his hand tightening around his fork. My mother covered her mouth, her eyes darting between Lucas and me. Sam stared at Lucas as if he had just betrayed her in the worst way possible. You're working for him?" she hissed. "Why wouldn't you tell me?" Lucas shifted uncomfortably. "Because I knew how you'd react. You've made it clear how you feel about Ethan and his work. I thought if I told you the truth, you'd think less of me." Sam's voice rose in anger. "Of course I would. You were supposed to be someone important, someone who could give me the life I deserve. Not some mechanic's assistant. That was the breaking point for me." I stepped closer, my voice strong and steady. "Enough, Sam. You talk about me like I'm dirt, but the truth is, my employees respect me more than you ever have. My customers trust me. I built something real, something that helps people every day. And while you've been chasing an image, your fiancé has been standing in my shop, learning that dignity comes from hard work, not from a title on a business card." My father slammed his hand on the table. "Ethan, that's enough." I turned to him, meeting his glare without flinching. "No, Dad. I've been quiet long enough. You've looked down on me my whole life because I didn't choose the path you wanted. You told me I wasn't welcome in this house because of my job, but the man you were so desperate to impress is on my payroll. Do you understand that? The person you thought was above me has been answering to me." The room went dead quiet again. My father opened his mouth, but no words came out. His face softened for a brief second, as though the truth had finally broken through his pride. My mother spoke softly, almost in a whisper. "Ethan, is this true?" I nodded. "Every word. He works for me. And I didn't humiliate him. I didn't mock him. I treated him with respect, the same respect I always wished my own family would show me." Lucas lowered his head, ashamed. "He's right. Ethan's been nothing but fair to me. He gave me a chance when I needed it most." Sam stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. Her face was twisted in anger, her voice sharp. "You ruined everything, Lucas. You made me look like a fool." Lucas looked at her with tired eyes. "No, Sam. You ruined everything when you decided appearances mattered more than the truth." My mother's eyes filled with tears. She reached for my arm, her voice trembling. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. We were wrong. I was wrong." I took a deep breath, letting the silence linger. For the first time in my life, I stood in that house without shrinking. I wasn't the disappointment. I wasn't the failure. I was the man who had built something of his own, and I finally made them see it. I looked around the table one last time, then said clearly, "Family should never measure love by job titles. If I'm not good enough to sit at this table as your son or your brother, then I'll walk away as a man who knows his worth." The words echoed through the room, and no one dared to answer. After I finished speaking, the dining room stayed frozen in silence. My father looked down at his plate as if the food in front of him could give him an answer. My mother's hand still rested on my arm, trembling as if she wanted to hold me back from walking out. Yet she had no words strong enough to bridge the gap. Sam stood rigid, glaring at Lucas with fire in her eyes. Lucas kept his gaze lowered, unable to face her or anyone else at the table. I could have stayed and watched the fallout, but I didn't want to. For years, I had sat in that house waiting for them to validate me. Now that I had finally spoken the truth, I realized I no longer needed it. Their judgment no longer defined me. I pulled out the chair at the far end of the table and sat for a moment, just long enough to feel the weight of their stares. Then I stood again. "Thank you for the invitation," I said firmly, "but I don't think I'll be staying for dinner." My father finally looked up, his face drawn with something that looked like regret, though his pride wouldn't let him put it into words. My mother whispered, "Ethan, please." But she didn't stop me. She couldn't. As I walked out of the dining room, I heard Sam's voice rise again, her anger pouring onto Lucas. "You've humiliated me in front of my own family," she spat. "You made me believe you were someone important, and all along you were hiding in his garage." Lucas answered her with a steadiness I hadn't expected. "You call it humiliation. I call it work, honest work. And if you think you're too good for that, then maybe you're too good for me." Her sharp intake of breath was the last sound I heard before I stepped out into the cold air. I stood in the driveway for a long moment, breathing in the sharp winter night. Inside, voices rose and fell, but out there, I felt nothing but clarity. I had spoken my truth, and it had landed where it needed to. Whether my father ever admitted I was worthy, or my sister ever respected me, didn't matter anymore. I knew who I was. When I got back to my truck, I noticed my phone buzzing with a message from Tony. He had texted me a simple line, "Merry Christmas, boss. Thanks for everything you do for us." It brought a smile to my face. For the first time in days, I felt peace. My family might never celebrate me, but the people who worked beside me every day did. They valued me, trusted me, and believed in the life I built. That night, instead of sitting alone in my apartment, I invited Tony, Mark, and a couple of the other guys from the shop over. We ordered takeout, set it out on paper plates, and gathered around my little tree. We laughed, swapped stories, and for the first time in years, Christmas felt exactly as it should. Not about appearances, not about status, but about being with people who cared for one another. Later, when the night grew quiet and the lights from the tree reflected softly across the room, I thought back to what my father had said. He believed my job would humiliate Sam in front of her fiancé. But the truth was, my job had revealed more about her and about him than it ever had about me. Work isn't humiliation. Work is dignity. It is sacrifice, discipline, and pride. If they couldn't see that, the blindness was theirs, not mine. I learned something powerful that Christmas. Sometimes, the family you spend your life chasing will never give you the acceptance you crave, but that doesn't mean you are alone. Sometimes the family you build with your own hands, through loyalty, respect, and shared struggle, is the one that truly matters. As I turned off the lights and sat in the glow of the tree, I whispered to myself, "I am enough." And for the first time in my life, I believed it. That Christmas taught me something I'll never forget. Respect doesn't come from job titles, or the clothes you wear, or the kind of house you live in. Respect comes from how you treat people. My family may never fully understand that, but I do. And I know now that the people who truly care about me, the ones who stand by me, are my real family. If you connected with this story, if it made you think about your own family, your own struggles, or your own strength, then I'd love to hear from you. Share this video with someone who might need it. Leave a comment about what part hit you the hardest, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to me, and it helps me bring you more stories like this one. Thank you for listening to mine.